In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt stood on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey, staring at something that shouldn't exist. Beneath his feet lay massive stone pillars carved with intricate reliefs of animals, foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes, arranged in circles weighing up to 16 tons each. The radiocarbon dating came back clear, 9,600 BCE. That's 11,600 years ago. The problem? According to everything we thought we knew about human history, the people who built this weren't supposed to have civilization yet. They were hunter-gatherers, no agriculture, no cities, no written language. And yet here, on this windswept ridge they would later call Göbekli Tepe, someone had quarried, carved, transported, and erected some of the most sophisticated megalithic architecture ever discovered. 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids. And then, for reasons we still don't understand, they buried it all, on purpose. Every single stone circle, carefully filled in with rubble and soil, like they were trying to hide it, or preserve it, or lock it away. This isn't just another cool archaeological site. Göbekli Tepe forces us to rewrite the entire narrative of human development. And the deeper researchers dig, literally, the more questions pile up. Because if hunter-gatherers built this, then what motivated them? What did they believe? And why does the design of Göbekli Tepe match architectural principles we don't see again for thousands of years? Some archaeologists call it a temple, some call it an observatory, and others think it might be a burial site for something we haven't found yet. And a few, just a few, whisper about whether this place was built to preserve knowledge from a civilization we haven't discovered. That last idea gets you laughed out of academic conferences. But after you see the evidence, the laughter gets quieter. Let me walk you through what we actually know, what we think we know, and what we're still arguing about. Because the story of Göbekli Tepe isn't just about stones. It's about control. Who gets to decide what history is, who gets to interpret it, and what happens when a discovery is so disruptive that it threatens entire fields of study. The site sits near the city of Şanlıurfa, in a region ancient texts call the Fertile Crescent, though 11,000 years ago it looked very different. Pollen samples and climate data suggest it was lusher then, with wild grains, herds of gazelle, and flowing water sources nearby. The hill itself, Göbekli Tepe means potbelly hill in Turkish, was considered unremarkable until Schmidt arrived. Local farmers knew there were stones under the soil. Some thought it was an old cemetery. But when Schmidt saw carved limestone peeking through the surface, he recognized something. Tool marks, precision, intention. He started excavating in 1995, and within months the team uncovered the first T-shaped pillars. These aren't rough stones. They're engineered. Each pillar has a flat top, a rectangular body, and what look like arms carved in relief along the sides, as if the stones themselves are meant to represent stylized human figures. Some have belts. Some have hands. Some have foxskin loincloths carved at the base. And nearly all of them are covered in animal reliefs, bas-relief carvings of species that lived in the region at the time. Vultures with outstretched wings, boars with tusks, serpents coiled around the stone. The craftsmanship isn't primitive, it's deliberate, symbolic, and in some cases, anatomically accurate. Schmidt spent the rest of his life excavating the site. He died in 2014. And the work continues today under Turkish and German teams. So far, they have uncovered several circular enclosures, labeled A through D, with more detected through ground-penetrating radar. Each enclosure is slightly different in size and design, but they all follow the same basic plan. Two massive central pillars in the middle, surrounded by a ring of smaller pillars set into low stone benches. If the circles are roughly 20 to 30 meters in diameter, the central pillars can weigh up to 10 tons. The stone was quarried from a ridge 500 meters away, where archaeologists found T-shaped blanks still attached to bedrock, abandoned mid-carve. Researchers have tried to calculate the labor required. Conservative estimates suggest it would take a team of several hundred people working for months just to move one pillar, using only Stone Age tools, wooden rollers, leather ropes, stone hammers. No metal, no wheels, no domesticated animals for labor. Just human muscle, planning, and coordination. That level of organization implies something we don't usually associate with hunter-gatherers: social hierarchy, leadership, specialization. Someone had to organize the labor. Someone had to feed the workers. Someone had to design the layout and teach the carvers what symbols to use. Göbekli Tepe wasn't a village. There's no evidence of permanent habitation. No trash pits, no hearths, no sleeping quarters. It was a destination. People came here, worked here, performed rituals here, and then left. Which raises the question, why go to all this trouble for a place you don't live in? Schmidt believed Göbekli Tepe was a temple, one of the first monumental religious structures ever built. He argued that religion came before agriculture, not after, that the need to gather for ritual was what drove humans to settle down, domesticate plants, and eventually build cities. That flips the old model on its head. We used to think civilization went like this. Farming leads to surplus. Surplus leads to settlements. Settlements lead to hierarchy. The hierarchy leads to temples. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the sequence might have been reversed. First the temple, then the drive to sustain it. Build the sacred site, and the civilization follows. Not everyone buys that. Some archaeologists argue the site could have served multiple functions. Ritual, yes, but also feasting, trade, knowledge exchange. There's evidence of large-scale animal butchering nearby. Thousands of gazelle bones, some burned, some smashed for marrow. Feasting deposits. If you're gathering hundreds of people from scattered hunter-gatherer bands, you need to feed them. The act of coming together to eat, share stories, and build something monumental might itself be the point. The temple model and the feasting model aren't mutually exclusive, but they emphasize different things, belief versus community. Scholars still debate which came first. Then there's the symbolism. The animal carvings aren't random. Researchers have cataloged scorpions, spiders, vultures, foxes, wild boar, aurochs, cranes, ducks, snakes, and a few enigmatic creatures that don't clearly match known species. Some enclosures focus heavily on predators and scavengers, vultures and foxes especially. In several pillars, vultures are depicted with human heads in their talons or near human skulls. That's a specific repeated motif. In later cultures, vultures are associated with death and excarnation, the practice of exposing corpses to birds so the bones can be cleaned before burial. There's a theory that Göbekli Tepe might have been a site for sky burial or mortuary ritual, though no human remains have been found in primary context yet. Some bone fragments were recovered, but their placement is unclear, and contamination from later periods complicates interpretation. So, we're left with suggestive iconography, but no smoking gun burial evidence. The vulture motif could be symbolic rather than literal, representing transformation, spiritual ascent, or the passage between worlds. We don't know. We're guessing. Here's where the story gets layered. Around 8000 BCE, after roughly 1,000 years of use, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Not destroyed, not abandoned, buried. The stone circles were carefully filled in with rubble, dirt, animal bones, and stone tools. This wasn't erosion. It wasn't a landslide. It was intentional backfill. Excavators found the infill packed tightly, with no signs of later disturbance until modern times. Whoever did this wanted to preserve the site beneath the earth, or close it. But why? One possibility is that the belief system changed. Maybe a new ideology replaced the old one, and burying the site was a way to seal the past. Another possibility is environmental. Climate records show the region was drying out around that time. The wild game populations were declining. Early agriculture was beginning. Maybe the people who built Göbekli Tepe moved on, and burying it was a final act of reverence. Or maybe it was something else, something we can't easily imagine from our modern perspective. Archaeologist Oliver Dietrich, who now co-directs the site, has suggested the burial might have been ritualistic closure, a way to finish the site after its purpose was fulfilled. But purpose implies intent, and intent implies understanding, and we don't have their words. We only have their stones. That silence is frustrating. Because Göbekli Tepe sits right at the edge of prehistory and history. A few thousand years later, writing emerges in nearby Mesopotamia, but at Göbekli Tepe there are no inscriptions, no texts, no clear explanatory context. The symbols are evocative, but they're not a language we can read. We're stuck interpreting them through the lens of later mythologies, Sumerian, Egyptian, Hittite, and that's risky. It's pattern matching. You can find what you're looking for if you squint hard enough. Which brings us to the controversial interpretations. In the years since Göbekli Tepe became widely known, mostly after Schmidt's work was popularized in the mid-2000s, it's been co-opted by a range of alternative history theories. Some writers claim Göbekli Tepe is evidence of a lost advanced civilization, predating all known cultures. It's possibly destroyed by a cataclysm like a comet impact or flood. They point to the site's sophistication and argue that hunter-gatherers couldn't have designed it without outside knowledge. Mainstream archaeologists push back hard on this. They argue that the evidence for hunter-gatherer complexity is actually well documented. Other Neolithic sites in the region, like Nevalu Chori and Karahan Tepe, show similar architectural features, though none as large as Göbekli Tepe. There's a developmental arc. Göbekli Tepe isn't an isolated anomaly. It's an exceptional peak in a broader pattern, but here's the thing that makes the debate hard to dismiss. Göbekli Tepe does show a level of planning and knowledge that seems ahead of schedule. The alignments of some pillars correspond roughly to celestial markers, solstices, equinoxes, yes, the rising of certain stars. Archaeoastronomers have proposed that the site might have functioned as an observatory or calendar. If true, that implies someone was tracking time, predicting seasons, encoding astronomical knowledge into stone. That's not impossible for hunter-gatherers. Indigenous cultures around the world have sophisticated sky knowledge, but it does suggest a degree of abstract thinking and long-term planning that challenges the old brutish caveman stereotype, which, to be clear, most modern archaeologists already reject. The issue isn't whether Stone Age people were smart, they obviously were. It's whether Göbekli Tepe represents a singular genius or a forgotten network of shared knowledge. Andrew Collins, a British researcher, has argued that the site's layout encodes specific star patterns. This particularly the constellation Cygnus, which he links to later mythologies about the soul's journey. His work is speculative and not peer-reviewed in mainstream journals, but it raises questions that are hard to dismiss entirely. Why do certain structures at Göbekli Tepe align with specific celestial events? Is that intentional, or are we seeing patterns that aren't there? To settle this, you'd need rigorous statistical analysis comparing the site's orientations with random chance, and that work is still being done. Until then, the astronomy question remains open. Then there's Graham Hancock, probably the most famous alternative historian associated with Göbekli Tepe. Hancock argues the site is evidence of a global advanced civilization wiped out by the Younger Dryas impact event around 10,800 BCE, a hypothesis that suggests comet fragments struck the Earth, causing mass extinction and rapid climate change. He believes survivors of this cataclysm carried knowledge to places like Göbekli Tepe, teaching the locals how to build. Mainstream geology and archaeology mostly reject the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis as either overstated or misinterpreted. The evidence for widespread impact craters from that period is debated. Some geologists point to nanodiamonds and platinum anomalies in sediment layers. Others argue those markers aren't definitive and could result from other processes. The impact theory isn't pseudoscience, but it's not consensus either. It's a live debate, which means the door isn't fully closed. Yet the problem with Hancock's interpretation of Göbekli Tepe specifically is that the site doesn't show signs of advanced technology. No metal, no evidence of writing, no wheels. What it shows is advanced social organization and symbolic thought. Those are different things. You can have genius without machines. The builders of Göbekli Tepe didn't need a lost civilization to teach them. They needed time, motivation, and a powerful shared belief. That said, Hancock's larger point that we might be missing chapters of human history isn't unreasonable. Archaeology is limited by what survives. Organic materials decay. Coastal sites from the Ice Age are underwater now. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. So, while most researchers don't accept Hancock's specific claims about Göbekli Tepe, yet the general humility his work encourages, maybe we don't know everything, is actually healthy. Here's where institutional dynamics come into play, and this part is tricky to discuss without sounding conspiratorial, so let me be precise. Göbekli Tepe is a Turkish national heritage site. Excavation permits, access, publication rights, and interpretation are controlled by Turkish authorities in cooperation with international research teams. That's standard practice. Every country manages its own archaeological resources. But it also means that research priorities, timelines, and public narratives are shaped by institutional and political factors. Some researchers have privately expressed frustration that the site isn't being excavated faster, or that certain findings aren't being published promptly. Others point out that slow, careful excavation is the only responsible way to handle a site this important. Both things can be true. There's also the question of interpretation bias. Academic careers are built on specific models of human development. If Göbekli Tepe really does overturn the agriculture-first model, that's not just an interesting footnote. It's a paradigm shift that affects textbooks, research funding, tenure committees, and professional reputations. That doesn't mean archaeologists are lying or hiding evidence. It means they're human. They have investments in certain frameworks. Paradigm shifts are uncomfortable. Thomas Kuhn wrote about this. Science doesn't progress smoothly. It lurches forward when old models break and new ones take over. Göbekli Tepe might be one of those breakpoints. And if it is, we should expect resistance. Then not because of conspiracy, but because of normal human inertia. What's not debatable is this. Göbekli Tepe exists. It's real. It's old. And it doesn't fit neatly into the story we were taught. Maybe that's the most important thing it teaches us. Not what ancient people knew, but how little we know about them. Let me bring this back to something tangible. Imagine standing inside Enclosure D, the largest excavated circle so far. The central pillars rise about 5.5 meters above you. The stone is cool under your hand. The carvings are worn but still visible. Animals frozen in limestone, their eyes blank, their forms sharp. Around you, the low stone benches curve in a perfect circle. You'd have been standing here with dozens, maybe hundreds of other people. Firelight flickering, drums maybe, chanting. Get the smell of roasting meat from outside, the stars overhead, tracked and mapped by someone who knew their patterns. This wasn't just a construction project. It was a statement. We are here. We can shape the world. We can make meaning out of stone. That impulse to build something that outlasts you, that speaks across time, that's what makes us human. Göbekli Tepe isn't evidence of aliens or lost super civilizations. It's evidence of us, fully human, fully capable, 11,000 years ago. But here's the haunting part. After they buried it, the knowledge of how to build structures like this seems to have faded. Later Neolithic sites in the region are impressive, but they're smaller, less sophisticated. The T-pillar tradition disappears. The iconography changes. It's as if Göbekli Tepe was the peak of something that didn't continue, or couldn't. Maybe because the environment changed. Maybe because the people who knew how to organize that labor died or dispersed. Maybe because the social conditions that made it possible were brief and fragile. We don't know. And that's the question that should keep us up at night. Not whether ancient people were smart, they obviously were. But whether progress is inevitable, whether knowledge, once gained, is kept, or whether it can be lost. Because if a culture capable of building Göbekli Tepe could vanish so completely that we forgot they existed until 1994, what else have we forgotten? What else is still buried? Some of you are probably thinking, okay, but what's the truth? Was it a temple, a calendar, a burial ground? And here's the honest answer, we don't know yet. Göbekli Tepe is less than 5% excavated. Most of it is still underground, deliberately preserved by the ancient builders themselves, and now protected by modern archaeologists who know that excavation is destruction. Every time you dig, you erase context. So they're going slow, using ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, photogrammetry, waiting for better technology, waiting for better questions. If you want to follow this story as it unfolds, drop a comment with your theory. Do you think Göbekli Tepe was religious, astronomical, or something else entirely? And if this kind of deep dive into history's mysteries is your thing, there's a whole playlist on this channel exploring other sites that don't fit the narrative. Places like the Rishat structure, the Bimini Road, and the submerged cities off the coast of India. Link in the description. Here's what I think matters most. Göbekli Tepe proves that the people we condescend to as primitive were capable of abstraction, beauty, coordination, and vision. They didn't need kings or priests or writing or cities to create something monumental. They needed belief. And belief, apparently, can move stones. But it also proves that history is fragile, that what we think we know is provisional, that entire civilizations can be erased, not by war or disaster, but by time and silence. Göbekli Tepe survived because someone chose to bury it. If they hadn't, it might have been quarried for building stone, scattered, forgotten. Instead, it waited. 11,000 years, buried under a hill in Turkey, holding its secrets, until someone finally looked close enough to see. Maybe that's the real lesson. The past isn't dead, it's not even past. It's just waiting, under our feet, in the stones, in the symbols we can't quite read. And every so often, if we're lucky, it speaks.